Welcome in, college football fans. It's time for the first and long college football show, and today we are going to be breaking down the Miami Hurricanes. We are on our little countdown here to kick off, and what we're doing is we're talking about the most intriguing teams in the country heading into 2024. Teams that Mason and I feel like are going to have a direct impact on the college football playoff and our national champion in 2024. If you have been following the series, you've seen a bunch of teams so far, and today it's Miami's turn. Thank you for following along with us. These have been a ton of fun. We have admittedly, we have put a lot of work into these things, and I can already tell that we are going to have a very developed understanding of these teams whenever the season rolls around. If you've been following these things as closely as we have, which I guess would be kind of impossible because we've been the ones doing it, but um, you're learning what these teams are all about before the season gets going. And if you like betting on college football like us, you're going to be in really, really good shape, and you're going to know all the teams to put the money on. And we're happy to do that here on the First and Long College Football Show. We love to do it ourselves. Mason, how are you today? We're on number 13, Miami Hurricanes, and we're making our way to number 1, man. We're almost there. How are you today? You ready to talk some Miami Hurricanes football?
Yes, sir. I think that Miami is going to be a major player in the college football playoff. I have them picked as a playoff team as of right now. About a week before the season, we'll be unveiling our top 25, top 12, and our playoff predictions. But as of today, in middle of July, late July, I do feel like that Miami's a legitimate playoff team this year. Really excited for this team. More excited than I've been in a long time to
Yeah.
see what the Hurricanes can do, and it's been a long time coming. So I hope I'm not jinxing it.
We've broke down Florida State. We've broke down Clemson. We've broke down NC State, and we broke down SMU, and now we're about to do Miami. And I like the order that we ended up doing it in, Mason, because I was kind of looking for my team that I felt like is the front runner for their conference, that ACC conference. And spoiler alert, I think this might be my team, brother. I think
Mm.
this might be the team that I'm jumping on with, because I really like some of the pieces that they've brought in, some of the things they've brought back. Of course, everybody's lost a good player or two, and Miami is not exempt from that. But I think they did a really good job replacing those pieces that they did lose. And let's just go ahead and jump into this thing. Um, Everybody knows about Mr. Mario Cristobal. It is a homecoming him making his way back to Miami. He has a 12-13 record so far as the head coach. We all know what happened in the Georgia Tech game last year, Mason. That kind of, could kind of put a hamper on things a little bit because, as you see there, they were 7-6 last year. That would have been 8-5, and 8-5 just it certainly sounds a lot better. And that loss was all on him. But with all that aside, Mason, I feel like Mario Cristobal has done everything that he's needed to do so as far as the off the field stuff. Recruiting rankings by a year, you can go back to 2020. They've been top 20 every single year, top 15 or top 10 every year since 2021. So multiple 5 stars coming into this program. That's something that I look for whenever I'm trying to not only figure out somebody that's going to be competitive in the conference, but now we're talking about national championship contention. And I'm not so much ready to say that I think Miami's going to be going to a national championship in 2024, although crazier things have happened. Um, but what I am saying is that this team is certainly worthy, talent level wise, of being one of those final 12 teams this year. I fully agree with you on that. Transfer portal rankings by year. This team has absolutely killed it in transfer portal as well as recruiting. Where they've picked up any slack that there might have been in high school recruiting right there in the transfer portal. And I feel like that's a really good way to address it, Mason. As far as both of those things combined, I feel like maybe Miami has handled this era with talent acquisition just as good as anybody. So really, really excited to see what Miami's got up their sleeve in 2024. I'm feeling pretty good about it. You can see their record versus rivals over there. 0-0 against Florida. We're going to change that real quick. That's going to be the first game of the season this year. All eyes are going to be on that game. I cannot wait. 1-3 versus Florida State. Got to win. It wasn't last year, was it year before, I think, maybe. But anyway, I feel like this might be the year to be able to get that done as well. 2-1 against Georgia Tech, 1-1 against Louisville. What do you think about Mario Cristobal and the job he's done at Miami and this team, their success and shortcomings in 2023? What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about the program?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that I noticed since he took over in 2022 for Manny Diaz is the roster difference. You know, when he took over, they went from being a top 15 recruiting program to a top 10 recruiting program, and you know, obviously, you can tell from 2022 being ranked 12th in the transfer portal, 7th in 23, 10th in 2024. He's completely changed the trajectory of this program just by given the roster additions that he's made and all the roster attrition. So I think this has kind of been culminating to a point where now they have definitively the best roster in the ACC. I don't think that you can deny that. I think that's just objectively true at this point, you know. And now does that mean that he's going to get over the hump and win the ACC? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't because
Yeah.
we've seen Mario Cristobal now at Oregon, you know, play with really good rosters, right? He had the best roster in the Pac-12 for his last two seasons, in my opinion. Didn't win the Pac-12, right? Now he's going to go to the ACC, try to do it this year. He's got the roster in place. Has he learned as a head coach the right buttons to press to get to that final championship game, at least in the ACC, to where you can hoist that trophy? We'll have to wait and see. I think if there's a year they could do it, it's this year because the rest of the ACC, in my opinion, is down for the most part. You know, at least your big boys in Florida State and Clemson. I think these are years that you can go and get those two programs, and Mario's got to take advantage of it and not have any mistakes this year, and you know, really kind of raise his stock and put his name in the hat of being, you know, a top 5, top 10 head coach in the country, and I think that he could with this roster and with the talent that he's got.
Yep. Shannon Dawson is going into his second season as Miami's offensive coordinator. We saw massive improvements in 2023, and specifically ran the ball really well. Rush yards per carry 5.1 for the whole season last year. Anything over 5 is exceptional. Look, overall, this team was 97th in scoring offense in 2022. They make the jump all the way up to 39th last year. That's a huge jump, man, and that's a program changing jump. And I got news for you, folks. They're going to be pretty good at doing everything on offense this year. I don't see a ton of holes in this lineup as far as offensively. We're going to break it down here in a second. I fully suspect this team to be top 15 or top 20 in just about every single one of these categories this year. Hard to predict third down conversion percentage. I believe, you know, some of that's got a lot. There's a lot that goes into that. So I don't know necessarily about that one, but with the guys that you've got coming in, and then on top of that, your 43% returning production, feeling pretty good about this offense. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm taking a wait and see approach on Shannon Dawson. I've never seen him with all the pieces that he's got like he does this year.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of taking everything that's happened with a grain of salt, good or bad. And I want to see it this year. I want to see him produce because every unit is really good on the offense. So I think this year will be the year where we know whether or not Shannon Dawson is an elite offensive coordinator. I think he's good for sure and worthy of being Miami's offensive coordinator. I just want to see him take the next step as his roster has taken the next step.
I guess kind of what I'm saying with that is there's no reason for them not to be top 20 in just about every category,
Yeah.
essentially. And so that's probably going to tell us, Mason, if he can't get it done with what's coming in for 2024, then might just not be able to get it done. So we'll see. He did a nice job with improvements from 22 to 23. Needs to continue that to really show his prowess on the offensive side of the ball. But for all intents and purposes, doing a good job. This is the guy that I think is just as responsible for this offense coming to glory 2024 than anybody, Mason. Cam Ward is a guy that I felt like I was on pretty early last year. He was not on a great team. Washington State was not a great team at all, folks. But if you watched any of their games, you could tell that this guy was an absolute playmaker, and that's why he's got the star watermark around him there because he's a star. He's going to be a star on this offense. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC this year. He can throw it. He can run it. 3,732 yards last year. Crazy, crazy good yards. 67% on top of that. 7 rushing touchdowns last year. Good touchdown to interception ratio. Good enough for sure. I don't know what to say bad about this guy. There was a couple of moments last year where you felt like there were some inconsistencies. But I mean, for God's sakes, he was playing for Washington State. So that offense was pretty inconsistent in general. I think he's going to have a lot better weapons around him. And it looks like this guy's locked in and really looking to make his print in college football this year. He could have left last year, Mason, and he would have probably been a third or fourth round guy. He's looking for the money, man. He's a player in a contract year, essentially, and I think that we're going to see this guy show out. Huge Cam Ward fan. I'm super excited. God forbid you got injuries. You do got a couple of decent ones. Reese Poffensbarger. I liked him. That's a pretty interesting name. I don't think I've ever seen Poffenbarger. But he's got a good arm, got some experience. So you got a little bit of experience, if you have to, smash the glass and hit the red button, right? But for all intents and purposes, Cam Ward is your guy, and he's a damn good one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have much more to add to that. Cam Ward played for Washington State last year, had some issues, just because of the team that he played for, right? They could not run the ball last year at all. And so when the defense, which mind you, the Pac-12 was pretty dang good last year.
Yeah.
When the defense knows that you're passing every single play, it makes it really tough on a quarterback, and it makes you feel like you have to go out there and win it for your entire team. And he pretty much did have to do that and was pretty successful. I mean, up until the Apple Cup, I think we were wondering what Washington State is, and it just they were inconsistent as a team. I think he was inconsistent because of that, but I don't know that I necessarily think that he's got to be more consistent. I don't see that as an issue for him as much as I do the team that he was on. So, I think coming over to Miami and being a part of a better roster overall is going to really benefit Cam Ward. And he, like you said, is going to be playing himself into the first round this year, or not, but he's certainly got the opportunity. One stat that I did highlight is 40% completion on 20 plus yard downfield throws, and so a guy who hits pretty well on those deep balls, and he'll have some weapons, which we'll get into here in a minute. One more thing to note on Emory Williams. I really like the guy. Was put into a tough situation, having to come in when Tyler Van Dyke went down, and play as a true freshman last year. Obviously wasn't ready. He looked like a true freshman, but I think that the talent is there. I think he's got some tools. This was a former 4-star guy coming out of high school. and just got got thrown into the fire, right? So I expect him to contest with Poffenbarger for that number 2 spot. And if he's able to win that, I think that's a huge confidence boost for him. And we could be seeing the quarterback of the future in some blowouts.
Yep. Let's talk about these wide receivers, Mason. It's an exciting group. You bring back Xavier Restrepo, who obviously got in a bar fight before this picture was taken. Um, uh, look, this guy's amazing. One hell of a competitor, over 1,000 yards receiving last year. I love this guy. He's got this. He's got the star pattern around him because he's a star, man. And he's not alone. You got Jacoby George there, 57 receptions, 864 yards, 8 touchdowns. I really like these two guys. You bring over Samuel Brown. He comes in from Houston. Isaiah Horton comes back. You got Nye Carr and Josiah Trader. I don't know who that guy is, but I sure have heard of Nye Carr. A couple of 4-star guys coming out of high school, out of the 2024 class. Those are. I really, really like this 1-2 punch that you've got here. It's almost like a 1A and a 1B. Now, Georgia kind of comes in and takes away Colby Young, right? And that kind of hurt a little bit. But you think that Samuel Brown is going to be able to come in and kind of fill that void for this team. I really, really like these guys. Restrepo, I think, is going to have another 1,000-yard season if he can stay healthy. You might have 2,000-yard guys this year, Mason. It's very, very possible. What do you think about this wide receiver room? Maybe you could wish that you had a little more depth or something, but
Yeah.
top end talent, I mean, pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, these three are not going to leave you wanting more. I think losing Colby
Yeah.
Young, you lose a lot of size with Colby Young, not just another depth piece, but a guy who's 6'4" and can absolutely play. And so I do think that the unit is thin, but the average rating of these guys is as high as anybody, really. I mean, Restrepo, I just have the most respect for him. I saw him, put his body on the line last year, making some plays over the middle, and he's just a baller. He's an absolute baller. The guy
Yep.
who you want to pick up the ball, and or catch the ball on a third down. 71% when targeted. I mean, what more can you ask for? He had 355 yards after the catch last year, so really dynamic. Once he gets the ball, he's a guy you can throw the ball to in space, let him shift around and make some guys miss. Really love what you're getting out of him. And then Samuel Brown coming over from Houston. Like you said, 815 yards last year on 62 catches. So another, high possession type of guy.
On a
And
bad
had
team. Bad
on a
team.
really, really tough team. Only 3
Yeah.
touchdowns, which kind of tells you more about the team than it does him, I think.
Yeah.
But he had 411 yards after catch. So more than half of his yards came after the catch, and 20 missed tackles forced. So another shifty receiver. The only knock on this group that I have is the size. I mean, that's pretty much it. Even Nakar coming in as a true freshman, he's a top 100 overall player from last year's class. Is a little bit undersized, right? And then you get Josiah Trader. He's also actually even more highly rated than Nikar. He was another top 100 guy, and he's only at about 6'1", so not necessarily a big threat. So that's kind of my only concern. Is yeah, you do have Isaiah Horton, who's a redshirt sophomore, doesn't have a ton of experience. He's at 6'4", listed at 6'4" at least. So I guess he'll kind of come in and fill that role for Colby Young, but not a proven guy. We'll have to wait and see if they have that dynamic, big receiver that we're used to seeing come from Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, all in all, it's going to be a productive group. How are they over the top? Can they manage their injuries, right? Well, and keep injuries at a minimum. That's going to be the biggest question because the top end talent is there. And as you said, maybe you could add a little variety there. You do have a guy like Chance Robinson coming in, 4-star wide receiver. We talked about Nikar, Joshua Trader. So you got some other options coming in. We'll see if maybe they can get those guys acclimated in different roles and have some diversity there in the wide receiver room. I guess this is probably the best transfer portal addition at running back, minus, Judkins from Ole Miss, headed over to Ohio State. Damian Martinez was one of my favorite running backs last year, Mason. And one of the things that it made it easy for me to cheer for the guy was he tried to do like the ride or die thing with Oregon State, right? Or as I spelled it down here, Oregon State. But I was falling asleep at the keyboard last night, not my fault. But anyway, Damian Martinez tried to stick with Oregon State, man, through the whole conference thing. And he had to go. He had to go, and he found him a good home. This guy is the real freaking deal. Damian Martinez is one of the best running backs in the country, hands down. One of my favorites to watch. 6.1 yards per carry for his career. He just checks all the boxes for you, Mason. You got Mark Fletcher coming back. He had 105 carries last year, over 500 yards. Ajay Allen, 70 carries, 361 yards. Those are a couple of nice accent pieces, but and you do have an incoming freshman Jordan Lyle, 4-star guy, coming in and maybe get some mop up time. Right? It's always good to have 4 or 5 running backs sitting around, and man, you got one really, really good one, and you've got several other pretty good ones, in my opinion. What do you think about the running back room? Not a worry for me here.
No, not at all, especially on the top end. I mean, Damian Martinez. You mentioned Quinshon Judkins potentially being better. I think it's hands down Damian Martinez as the
Thank
best
you.
transfer.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. I think that he's a very undervalued running back to like the casual fan. I think real
Yeah.
college football fans know it was kind of like, to me at least, it was Ollie Gordon and then Damian Martinez last year as far as like the best running backs in the country. I do have Ollie Gordon just a notch ahead of him. But I think that Damian Martinez is an elite back who is really dynamic out of the backfield, catching the ball as well. Kind of a weird stat, but 3.8 yards per carry after contact on Damian Martinez.
Mm.
That is unreal. 3.8 is like a decent number for a running back in general, and he's taking a hit and then going another 4 yards almost. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. And then 33 missed tackles as well. Just extremely elusive, slippery type of running back, and and can run with a little bit of power. He's not just shifty. He kind of does it all. I think he's the total package, and could be one of those running backs that could be taken in like the late first round next year. I think if things go well for Miami as a whole, because sometimes you get drafted as high as your team allows you to in some cases, and in particular at the running back position, because you have to run behind a competent offensive line, which I think Miami has, which I'm sure we're about to get into.
Yep. Let's get into it right now. You got a couple of stars out there. Zach Carpenter, Jalen Rivers. Those are pretty much lockdown positions there, Mason. Not really anything to worry about. Look, this line was talented, but it was young and inexperienced last year, and now they're back with some quality experience. You got right tackle there, Francis Malagoa. I knew how to pronounce that. And right guard Inez Cooper. They both started all 13 games last season, so there's a couple of those young guys that have already got a lot of valuable experience, Mason. That's kind of a trend across this whole offensive line, really, for the most part. You look for redshirt freshman Samson Okanola and Tommy Kinsler to be contributors as well. You got Jalen Rivers there that I mentioned. He's in his 5th year, second team All ACC selection. Indiana transfer there at center. I like what I see here, man.
Yeah.
You've got not only a full group of guys, it's like we know where everybody's going to be playing, which means they know where they're playing, right? Going into this offseason, I feel like there's something to be said for that, getting mentally prepared. And then you've got a couple of guys that are going to be, kind of working their way in and out as needed, covering for injuries. Um, I feel good about this group. I feel really good about this group. Your head coach was an ex-offensive lineman. You would think that this team would mirror his personality, right? And him being that CEO type of this team. You would think that this would be a good offensive line and something that this team would hang their hat on. What do you think about the offensive line? I'm sold. I like it. I'm thinking we're in good shape. Not to mention Cam Ward's mobile, his ability to be mobile is going to help this offensive line as well. So there's so many different ways that Cam Ward affects this offense. He affects the offensive line even. His style of play is going to add some relief to these guys who really cut their teeth last year, and now they're back for more. What's your thoughts on this? I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got three bona fide dudes in Inez Cooper, who is to me an all ACC caliber type of player. There, I think that Zach Carpenter could be an all ACC type of center, and I think that Jalen Rivers has already proven he could be all ACC. And over there at left tackle, and then I look at the other two positions and I see some youth, right? Both of those
Yeah,
guys, Okunlola and Maui Noah, I think is how it's pronounced. But both of those
Malikoa.
guys, I think so. But both of those guys are, second year guys. But when I look at Maui Noah, I see a guy who really came on late last year. He was forced to start as a true freshman and struggled early, which you can expect. But in the last 7 games, only gave up 5 quarterback hurries in those last 7 games. I think he's a potential All ACC guy, even as a true sophomore. Somebody who probably moves over to left tackle once Jalen Rivers presumably leaves after this year, because he's a guy who is probably going to be an all conference type of player as well. But and then behind them, you've got, like you mentioned, Tommy Kinsler, also a redshirt sophomore, and Matthew McCoy. I think that he'll step in when needed as well. And then they do bring over a transfer. Granted, he's a community college transfer, but Markel Bell adds a little bit of depth as well on this offensive line. I really like this unit. I think especially the starting five
Yeah,
is elite. I mean, they're up there with, to me, this is a top 10 offensive line in the country, regardless of conference. I think that it is, again, objectively the best offensive line in the ACC. And another elite group. It's you could argue this is the best unit on the offense, and we just talked up the other 3 units that we've gone through so far. So
yeah.
I really like what they've got, returning, and then what they brought in as well.
Yeah, the pieces are there for sure. And let's just mention tight end real quick. Cam McCormick, Elijah Arroyo, both guys that are going to be there for the tight end purposes. Yeah, there's your 5 seconds of fame, guys. You're welcome for putting you on the First and Long College Football Show for all 5 seconds. Let's talk about defense. 2023 stats. This team was really good against the run and not as good against the pass, but not horrible, right? 22.8 points per game, pretty decent. I would say just decent. That's top half of the country, right? Nationally, 44th. We got to see some steps in the right direction in the secondary this year. If Miami is wanting to not only get into the college football playoff, but maybe actually win a playoff game, I think you're going to need to be a little bit better in the secondary, right? And sometimes that means being a little bit better on the defensive line, getting after the quarterback, getting pressure, things like that. But for all intents and purposes, Mason, this was Pretty good defense last year. Let's just kind of jump into the defensive line. You bring back some talent. Ruben Bain Jr. I put the star around him. I feel like he's going to do something. And then you got a bunch of transfer guys. So, what's your thoughts on this defensive line? I really like Ruben Bain Jr. there. You've got Tyler Barron and Elijah Alston, kind of waiting in the wings at defensive end. Simeon Barrow and Justin Scott waiting in the wings at defensive tackle. You bring in, as you can see, C.J. Clark, Marley Cook. You got Akeem Mesidor, who was hurt, so he only played a couple of games in 2023, but he's supposed to be back. And then, Mason, that's not to mention all the 5-stars you got coming in on the defensive line. Look at the last line there. Justin Scott, 5-star. Marquise Lightfoot, 5-star. Armando Blunt, 5-star. All these guys join for the 2024 season. Now, I'm not always sold that a freshman is going to compete, but if you've got that many 5-stars, one of them is probably going to pan out right away, I would imagine, and help you. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter immediately, but I am saying that at least one of those guys, if not a couple of them, are going to help this team out this year. I talk about hitting the portal and hitting in the right spots. I think they just nailed this defensive line. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, and I'm speculating here. I don't know how the timeline works out, but you probably had been talking to all those defensive linemen, all those 5-stars that you mentioned, saying, "Hey, we got room. You can come in, start right away." And then you bring in all these transfers, at the end, and say, "Well, I think we're looking pretty good
Just
on
learn from
defensive
them for
line."
a year. Just learn from them
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
year, and then we're gonna work you in there. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. But nonetheless, I can't fault Miami for taking that approach. You've got
yeah.
you've got some real youth in the room. This is a really deep room. This is the best unit of Miami's team. I think by far. You've got some really quality pieces, and I'm gonna give you some stats here. Bear with me on the stats, y'all. But I think that it's really important. So obviously, Ruben Bain comes in at defensive end. He was the best player on the defense, maybe besides Cam Kitchens last year. Just an absolute stud. 44 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for a loss, 7.5 sacks, 26 quarterback hurries, 18% pass rush win rate, which is really good. And he was a true freshman. Like, he's getting better this year, and we're going to see him for another year after that. Future, first rounder, no doubt, in my opinion. Then you get C.J. Clark coming in to play the nose tackle, coming over from NC State. Had a pretty decent year last year, 22 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, and 1 sack. Not too much to say about him. He's a nose tackle. He's not going to be a game breaker in the stat book, but pretty good at playing the run. That's what you want out of a nose tackle. At defensive tackle, I think that the starter at D tackle is going to end up being Simeon Barrow Jr. This is a guy who had 17 quarterback hurries, a 14% pass rush win rate, and is coming over from Michigan State. Behind him, or moving in with him is Marley Cook. I think that you could interchange those two. Marley Cook had 22 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, and 1 sack last year. And then the guy that were really the two that I think are the most intriguing of the bunch. You've got Akeem Mesidor listed there, who's phenomenal, by the way. I really like Akeem Mesidor as well, but I think he's going to move into more of a depth role for this unit and be somebody that can play inside or outside on the edge. But I think that Tyler Barron coming over from Tennessee is going to get the starting nod. This guy had 31 quarterback hurries last year, 17% pass rush win rate, 10 tackles for a loss, 6.5 sacks, 16 run stops. So he plays the pass and the run well. An absolute plug and play. And a guy who should feature on this defensive line. Then behind him, Elijah Alston coming over from Marshall. I get it, it's Marshall, but 20% pass rush win rate. So, I mean, y'all, 10% is really good. Like, that's like you're a starter at 10%. He's doubled that. He's at 20%, had 22 quarterback hurries and 21 run stops. So, another guy who can play the run and play the pass really well. I'm completely sold on this defensive line. I don't know if I just sold y'all on the defensive line, but you've got pieces, man. That you've got guys all over. Not to mention the 3 5 stars that you mentioned. You legitimately have 2.5 units that you can play and feel really comfortable in starting. And so yeah, as I'm doing this breakdown, I'm just kind of mind boggled by all these statistics. But the stats speak for themselves in college football, and these guys in their pass rush ability at least are extremely elite. Some of the best that I've seen so far in our breakdowns.
Well, and I don't want to speak too soon, or maybe this sounds a little crazy, but you guys, a little homework for you. Go look back at all the ACC champions over the last few years. Mainly, it's been Clemson or Florida State, right? But whatever team in the ACC has the best defensive line typically wins the conference.
I mean, you could say that about the national champions, the past few years. Georgia in 21, 22, and then Michigan in 2023
That's
had
true.
not just the best defensive line, not just the starters, not just the first rounders, but a second group that came in and gave them a fresh set of legs, and then potentially a third group, later in games. That's the difference, I think, in the Miami team of this year in comparison to last year. The defensive line is extremely deep, and they are a legitimate threat, not just in the ACC, but in the college football playoffs.
Now, with all this being said, we're about to go to linebackers and secondary, and then we're going to pull up the schedule. But I'm just going to throw this out there. This isn't the first time Mario Cristobal's had a very talented team, and it hasn't worked out. So there's been some coaching blunders on his behalf. I hope that he's figured that stuff out. Listen, Kirby Smart had coaching blunders when he first started out. Kirby Smart's clock management when he first started coaching was terrible, right? If Mario Cristobal can figure out, if he has figured out, how he wants to go with the game, how he wants to coach the game, how he wants to manage the clock. If he can do all that stuff correctly, this team's got a real good shot. Let's go into linebackers. Francisco Mauigoa, 44 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. That's a star player in my eyes, Mason. Wesley Bisanthi. I don't know how you say that. He comes over from Middle Tennessee. He had 27 starts, 61 tackles. He may not end up starting, but he's going to rotate a lot. He's going to play. Jalen Alderman, Raul Aguirre. Those are a couple of guys that are going to provide depth. They come transferring in, or one of them did there. And they're going to play in a rotation. You got one for sure, dude. You got 3 dudes that can rotate the other spot there at inside linebacker. I think you're in good shape. I feel pretty good about it. What's your thoughts on it, Mason, with the guys that they added to this room and then the guys that they bring back?
Yeah, so with Maui Goa, I've got a little bit different stats than you. I don't know if maybe those stats didn't get updated on the slide there, but
Mm.
so the stats that I had were 82 tackles, 18
Yeah, they
tackles
didn't
for a
get.
loss. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then 7.5 sacks, 34 run stops. I know it's middle linebacker. You expect them to play the run and get a lot of run stops, but that's a lot of run stops. And also 15 quarterback hurries. So another weapon on this defense in the front seven that can play the run and play the pass rush. Only 11% missed tackle rate. That's really really good, and a bigger guy too that just plays downfield, plays with a lot of speed for a guy of his size. Really really important that he came back this year because he's an integral part of this front seven.
Yeah, and Wesley Bisanth is, of course, not a transfer. I was just look. I'm reading the teleprompter. All right, they put it on the teleprompter, and I read it. He's not from Middle Tennessee. He is a returning guy. So yeah, that was actually for Marley Cook on the last slide. Right, he
Yeah.
came from Middle Tennessee. He had 27 stars, 61 tackles. My apologies, guys. Not perfect here. Okay, not perfect. We're learning. We're learning as we go. So be easy on us. Tell us in the comment section though where else we messed up. We don't mind. Let's go into the secondary, Mason, because as we talked about at the top, with these defensive, position groups, I feel like this is one of the most important that Miami has got to conquer to get to the next level, right? Win an ACC
Yeah, yeah.
championship. Michelle Powell, I really like. Daryl Porter, I really like. I feel really good on that right side over there. Um, some of these other guys, I'm still trying to kind of figure out how I feel about some of these. For all intents and purposes, I think this is going to be a better secondary, Mason. All in all, I think it will be better. Is it top 20 in the country, or are we talking, just a top 50, type thing? That's kind of where I'm at and trying to figure out. What are your thoughts on the secondary? Um, really like a couple of those pieces, as I said, Daryl Porter there and Michelle Powell. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, so I do like Daryl Porter. I think that he was kind of an unspoken, you know, stud for this team. Only got targeted 26 times last year, and only gave up 12 catches on those 26 targets. So that's kind of what you want at cornerback. You don't want your name called a lot because that probably means that you're getting burned. But then on the left cornerback, at the left cornerback position, you've got Deone Hill mentioned there. I've got a competition going on, and so, or at
Sure.
least that's what I'm thinking. And all of these position groups, there's a competition going on. But Damari Brown, I think, is a guy who played as a true freshman last year. Probably got on the nerves of a lot of Miami fans last year because he did make some freshman mistakes, right? He was kind of a part of the problem in a lot of ways, but I think he learned from those mistakes and actually kind of played a little bit better towards the end of the season. I think he's going to be in a little bit of a competition there with Jadias Richard, who was a transfer coming over from Vanderbilt last year and didn't get to play much, but they really liked him at Vanderbilt, and he's a guy who brings a lot of length. So look to see him, really push for some starting position, or a starting position and some playing time there. And then at strong safety, you've got Jaden Harris there. Well, you've got him at the
I got them
nickel
mixed
listed
up,
here.
the nickel and the safety.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I've got Michelle Powell playing the nickelback,
Correct.
position. He's a guy who had almost 900 snaps last year for Washington. You know, could really be a player. He could be playing safety even. In my notes I have him as a toss up at safety or at nickel. And then that leaves Jaden Harris over at nickel or safety. I think that the nickel or safety position is going to have a competition as well with Markeith Williams, who is another player who came on last year as a redshirt freshman and really got better at the end of the year. But I think the big story in the secondary for Miami is Zaquan Patterson, a true freshman coming in. You you kind of worry about these guys who come in and play as true freshmen, especially in the secondary. That's a really tough position to play as a true freshman. But I mean, by all accounts, Zaquan Patterson's the dude. He's a guy who could end up being a starter right away, day one. And that's saying a lot for a guy who came in, I believe, as a 3-star recruit. In a Miami team that's full of 5 stars. Well, guess what? The 3-star might have been a diamond in the rough that they found here, and good for them if that's the case. I think that you will take any of those playmakers, no matter what year they're in, no matter what their experience is. This unit has to get better overall, and I think that there's a lot of competition going on in this room, and there's a lot of pressure on this room to get better. Look, Miami coaches, they know that this is a championship contending team. They're going to put a lot of pressure on the safety and DB room, and I think that it's warranted. And hopefully, that pressure will make diamonds, and you'll get some really good really good players out of this bunch. But I do think that it's the. I think even if they do hit on some of these players, it's it's going to be the worst unit of the defense. But can they be average in the ACC? If that's the case, given what they have up front, I think that they're going to be in a pretty good position to win the ACC.
Yeah. So just to clear this up, because I know everybody's going to point it out. I totally messed this slide up. So Zaquan Patterson, he's the true freshman, and Powell, the transfer, will compete at nickel. And then at safety, you got Isaiah Taylor coming over from Arizona. And then at strong safety, you got Jaden Harris. So I had got that stuff mixed up. And from what I had read, Deone Hill does have an opportunity to get that corner job. There is, competition amongst those positions. So as you said, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see these guys shuffled up. Look, after what we saw last year with the secondary, you're going to see these coaches getting out there and getting the best 5 defensive backs on the field at the same time. And whatever they got to do to make that happen.
I'm hearing that Patterson is going to play safety though. So
okay.
Jaden Harris might get moved down to nickel. It might be Powell, but Taylor may end up staying at safety. There's a lot of moving parts going on. There's a lot of competition. Yeah. Patterson is being very disruptive in a good way. I think that they looked at him at the nickel spot, and then they're like, you know what, this might just be a safety, because nickel's a little bit tough to learn, I think, right away. But you're kind of in that hybrid role of a cornerback and a safety. You kind of want to be a cornerback with some size on you, so maybe not the best role for a true freshman, but at safety, I think he's going to fit in really nicely. And if that's where he even ends up. So what I'm saying is your mistake was probably not even a mistake, because this is all going to get changed probably by the start of the season anyways.
Well, brother, we've done so many of these things. I may have read it somewhere and did it this way for a reason, and then now I'm second guessing myself again. I listen to. I do 2 teams a day, that I'm trying to absorb all this knowledge from. So you guys just bear with me. Those guys pictured are going to be all over the secondary. They're all going to make impacts on this secondary this year. We'll have to see in September how it works out. I think overall it will be at least slightly a better secondary, because there's a lot of competition going on, as you said, Mason, and it's going to be an emphasis, a point of emphasis for the team this year. Mason, this is a very, in my opinion, exciting start to the season against the Florida Gators. I am super excited for this game. It's going to be in Gainesville, August 31st. All eyes will be upon it. And, everybody's super excited to see what the Florida Gators are going to bring to the table this year. And I think they're about to get rocked by this Miami Hurricanes unit. I'm super excited to see that game, though. Always tough to go to Gainesville and win a football game. It's going to be a raucous environment, no doubt. But super excited for that. September 7th, you got to win. September 14th, you also got to win. That's Ball State, right? That's okay. Yeah, there's Louisville on October 19th there. So then you got South Texas. In South Texas, I feel like, South Florida. I mean, the Bulls. Don't understand why you would play a home and home with the Bulls. I don't understand why you would give them the benefit of your football team going to their stadium. Can't understand that, but to each their own, I guess. Athletic directors should not be wanting to schedule that game. But that's, I digress. It is going to be a win, but you don't stand to benefit anything as being a Miami beating on South Florida, because if they do beat you, shame on you. If you beat them, it's because you were supposed to. Nothing to gain there, in my opinion, except for injuries and a possible embarrassing loss. But you got to play somebody, so that it'll be South Florida. You got Virginia Tech, September 27th. Got to go to Cal. That'll be a long road trip all the way across the country. October 19th, going to Louisville. That's going to be a really tough game. Louisville is a team that is right up there in the standings for best odds to win the ACC. So that's going to be quite the battle there. Followed by another really tough battle there at Hard Rock Stadium with the Florida State Seminoles. Then you got Duke at home, Georgia Tech on the road, sneaky game there. Wake Forest coming to your place, and Syracuse on the road. So while I said the Georgia Tech game is sneaky, you do in the year those last 4 games on some easy games. I think that could be really beneficial for a team that I feel like has a chance to go to the college football playoff and the ACC championship game. Mason, I am feeling like 11-1 is going to be the record for this team, and I could see them losing one game to either Louisville or Florida State. And right now, Mason, I don't see this team losing to Florida State. I just I know that that's a rivalry game, so I'm throwing it in there because a lot of times rivalry games, even if teams aren't even, there's it's a coin flip sometimes, right? But um, I'm thinking I could see this team losing the road game at Louisville and then avenging that loss in the ACC championship game against Louisville, and beating them to go on to the college football playoff. I'm really high on this team. I'm counting on Mario Cristobal to not have any time management or game management snafus. That's going to be very important whenever you're trying to go 11-1 or possibly 12-0. But Mason, I am buying Miami stock right now, and I expect to see them in the 12-team playoff this season. What are your thoughts?
Well, looking at this schedule, I think it's pretty favorable for a team that I'm as high on as I am. I think that South Florida's in a tricky spot. Not saying that they should lose that game, but it is a little bit of a tricky, like sleeper type of, type of upset. That you see in college football. You probably shouldn't see it. I don't think we'll see it, but I just should note that it comes right before you get Virginia Tech at home. This team will be geared up for Virginia Tech for sure. But yeah, like you said, starting off with that game against Florida, I don't see a way that Florida wins this game. Not with their offensive line going up against this D line. I think it's going to be a really messy situation. I think Graham Mertz is going to be running for his life, and it's going to be tough for Florida to swallow that pill at home. But I think that Miami wins that one, and I don't think it's going to be all that competitive either.
Yeah.
Florida A&M, of course, is a win. By the way, is there? Did they leave any Florida teams off the list? Like, is there another Florida team
No,
that
all
they could
Florida
play?
teams are playing all Florida teams this year. It's crazy. The Florida Gators are even playing UCF.
Yeah, that's
It's
interesting.
wild. It's so
It's
wild.
interesting. It's smart. When it comes to traveling and logistics,
Yeah.
this team's got to go
Yeah.
play at Cal this year. So, wherever you can get the mileage down, you might as well take it, right?
Yeah.
You're really lucky to get Virginia Tech at home. I think that changes the scope of that game in a big way because that Blacksburg's a tough place to play. So really benefit from a home game there. That will be a tough game overall. Then you got to go to Cal the next week. And then you get a bye week, and I think it's important to get that bye week before you go play Louisville. And Louisville's a really good team. Look, you can go back and watch our breakdown of them. I feel really good about them. They don't have the dudes that Miami has, but that's definitely a team that you could lose to, especially on the road. Get Florida State at home. I feel really good about that game for Miami. Still one of those that you circle and say, yeah, we could lose that game for sure. And then Duke at home. I think that's an easy win as they're rebuilding. Georgia Tech away. I think Georgia Tech is in for a revenge game, and so
Mm.
I don't want to put too much into an emotional victory, right? An emotional game, but I think that Miami's going to be looking to kind of win twice there in a way if they can. Wake Forest is an easy W. I think Syracuse during their rebuild is going to be an easy W as well. So, yeah, potentially 12-0 for sure. Also potentially 9-3, right? I don't think they're going 9-3. I think this team is way too good to lose 3 games that they shouldn't lose. They will be favored in every game all season long. Like I don't see a game on here that they won't be favored in. Maybe Florida State. But if that's the case, I'm putting some money down on Miami because I think that they don't really match up well with Miami for the most part. To me, I'm saying I think 11-1 makes a lot of sense. I don't know where that one loss comes from. It could be Tech. It could be
Right.
or Georgia Tech, that is. It could be Virginia Tech. It could be Florida State. And it could be Louisville. And I don't think that Florida is, like I said, I don't think that game's going to be very competitive. But of those 4, I think you probably lose one. And that's a pretty good hit rate, though. If you're hitting on 75% of those, quote unquote 50-50 games, I think that like I said, Miami will be favored in those games, but those are definitely games that you could lose. And yeah, but at the same time, we just saw Florida State with a team that's not as talented as this Miami team. They're not. This Miami team is more talented than Florida State was last year. Florida State went undefeated. So it's very possible for Miami to go undefeated this year, given their roster. But I'm going to put my money on 11-1 and an ACC championship.
I don't know what the over-under is for the win-loss record for this team for the year, but I know it's not 10.5. I'm sure it's not set that high. Probably set at 9.5. I bet.
Probably.
I would think. I'm going to throw a little something down on that, Mason, because I just feel really, really good about this team. As I said, we broke down a lot of ACC teams already. This is by far the one that I feel the most convicted in the most inclined to put my bet with, and I'm going to do so. I think this team got all the pieces that it needs to not only win the ACC championship, but go on to a 12-team playoff this year. Super excited for some Miami football. For the love of God, please go fill up your stadium, though. If Miami's going to be this good, you need to go sell out Hard Rock. Please don't let that thing be sitting there empty. That's embarrassing for college football. There's no reason for it. I know there's a lot to do in Miami. I understand that. But this year, the Miami Hurricanes are going to be really, really good. So let's get out there and go check out the Hurricanes and be part of history this year, because I got a feeling this team is going to do some really, really good things. Folks, we thank you so much for tuning in on the First and Long College Football Show. We hope that you will consider hitting the subscribe button. If you're a Miami fan or you're just a college football fan in general, maybe you're a Florida State fan doing a little bit of behind enemy lines, type stuff here, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. We're super responsive in the comment section. We got tons of people commenting in there all the time. We love talking to you guys. Let us know what you think about our breakdown. And as I said, I hope you'll consider hitting the subscribe button. We're going to have a great year. We're going to have live shows. We're going to have all that good stuff here on the First and Long College Football Show. We got wall-to-wall Power 4 college football coverage for you. Thank you all so much for watching. Signing out for the First and Long College Football Show, I'm Marcus. That's Mason. Everybody have a great day.